Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul, joined by Jack Weinberger, Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia, and a special guest today, owner of the Pack-A-Day podcast, host of Pack-A-Day radio show on the Fan Milwaukee. We have Andy Herman with us. Andy, thanks for hopping on.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever been applauded on before. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. And obviously, Paul, we got to catch up a couple weeks ago for a home and home, if you will. And appreciate you guys having me on today.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And thanks for bringing me on just a couple weeks ago there. It was a lot of fun hopping on the Pack-A-Day show. I was saying to the guys earlier, and I said to you on that show, I don't listen to too many podcasts, but the Pack-A-Day shows are always in my general routine when I'm throwing something in my ear. So, it's weird as a Viking fan keeping up to date with the Packers so much, but sort of the way our audiences came towards us, it's like, all right, gotta stay updated. And I mean, you guys do it better than anyone. So I always appreciate your content. It's great stuff. So we have a pretty fun show here today. We're kind of going over the general NFC North with a little bit more of a focus on your Green Bay Packers. So we could just dive right into it if you guys are good to go here. Andy, we saw you at OTAs a lot in the spring. We were watching your videos. I think you had a couple viral videos going out, particularly one about Matthew Golden, someone we've talked a lot about on this show here. So what were your first impressions, being able to see him in person up close for Matthew Golden? And if you want to include Savion Williams as well, the two rookies, how are you feeling about those guys very early on in their careers here?
Yeah, so we'll start with Savion first because it's probably an easier conversation. Savion was in a red, jersey because he was in like a non-contact jersey, which is kind of funny and ironic because it's supposed to be a non-contact practice anyway. Mm-hmm. But he was a little bit limited in what he was doing. Didn't do really any teamwork or anything like that. So we didn't get a great feel for anything from a Savion Williams. Going through and watching his tape, and once he was drafted and kind of doing a deep dive. Extremely excited about him. Might be a little bit of a project, but there's some really fun stuff, especially on his earlier tape. But from an OTA and minicamp standpoint, we didn't get a real taste or flavor of Savion Williams yet. So hopefully we get that early in training camp. As far as Matthew Golden goes, I'll start with OTAs. OTAs, he immediately came in and was with the ones right away. Now, a couple things you should know about that conversation. Number one is Green Bay does not just throw players with the ones. In fact, he was the only rookie that was working with the ones in any capacity. Every other rookie that they had was, so they basically split the sides of the field, the ones and basically everyone else. And all the other rookies were with everyone else. Matthew Golden was the only rookie with the ones. I will also say, the ones were like 7 wide receivers. So he was one of 7 wide receivers that were working on the side of the ones. So place that where you will. I think those are the two kind of takeaways there. What I noticed in OTAs right away is that everything was as advertised. The speed, the ability to vary speed within the routes, the route running, everything that you wanted to see was right there. And, you could see immediately why they took him in the first round. First impressions don't mean a whole heck of a lot, but it's better when you get a good one. And I think his first impression was good. Now, he had a couple nice catches in OTAs. Again, stood out. Nothing spectacular, nothing flashy, nothing down the field, anything like that. Just good routes, solid catches, everything that you wanted to see. Minicamp, it was a little bit more nondescript, and there was definitely a couple of rookie moments. So, for example, there was one play in particular, and he is going to line up. He's lined up on the wrong side of the formation. So they get him reset on the other side of the formation. They tell him to go in motion. He goes in a short motion. He's supposed to go in a long motion. So they get him finally to go in the long motion. And then he runs his route and he runs the wrong route. At least that's what it certainly seemed like from the communication that was going on with him from our vantage point. Those are very common rookie moments for anyone. I remember Tucker Kraft, Edgerrin Cooper, amongst others, having those very similar wide-eye rookie moments in OTAs and minicamp. So some learning curve, some things that he's got to learn from and still kind of understand the playbook. Absolutely. Any flashy, sexy plays that are worth noting? Nope. But definitely looked the part and was as advertised coming out of the first round out of Texas.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. The mistakes in OTAs, the running the wrong routes, that's music to our ears. But jokes aside, yeah, thank you. Jokes aside, though, we've been talking about this a lot. Is there a point in the year where, if you were to make predictions, we like doing predictions on this show. If you were to make a prediction, do you think at any point in the season, and if so, when would he become the number one overall, like the wide receiver one for this team?
So Green Bay is weird in the fact, well, in a lot of ways, but in the fact that, I don't even think, I know they don't look at it that way. And clearly when they had Devontae Adams, they looked at it that way. They had a clear number one receiver. I don't think they're going to view anyone as like the alpha within this room. Now, if somebody steps up and grabs it, great. Like that could certainly happen. But I think no matter what, you're going to see a pretty sound rotation between Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden. I'd expect those four to be the initial ones. And then once Christian Watson comes back, whenever that might be, I think he'll be in that conversation as well. I think you're going to see a ton of Jaden Reed in the slot. I think you're going to see a lot of Golden and Wicks and Dobbs on the outside. And then just kind of they're going to play a lot of 11 personnel. So a lot of 3 of those 4 guys at all times. And I think they're going to spread it out. And even more so, if anyone's wondering from like a fantasy football standpoint, which do not take my advice in a fantasy football world, it's usually just do the opposite. But from a wide receiver standpoint, they're going to all spread the ball around. But you now have Josh Jacobs, who's getting a bunch of carries at running back. Marshawn Lloyd's coming back. He's going to get some touches. You have Tucker Kraft, who everyone has basically been saying they want him to be the number one option at like within the almost, not Josh Jacobs included, but like from a receiving standpoint, they want to feed Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave's expected to have a larger influence this year. So you just have so many mouths to feed. I don't know that there's even an avenue or a space for anyone to be like, oh my God, he had 90 catches for 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns or anything like that. But if you said at some point this year, we're in go-to situations, in red zone, in goal line, whatever it might be, have to have it situations, that Matthew Golden became that guy, would not be stunned at any point in time if that ended up happening.
Mm-hmm. Ziggy, go ahead. Looked like you want to say something.
I mean, well, we're talking a lot about rookies here, and obviously it's easy to get excited about rookies, but you haven't really seen what they can do. One player I'm really watching for Green Bay is somebody who came alive in the last few weeks of last season, Edgerrin Cooper. Edgerrin Cooper, highest PFF grade weeks 15 to 18, really started to look like himself after a tough first half of the season. And outside of Green Bay, this doesn't seem like a player who's getting a lot of attention, right? If you look like defensive player of the year odds, you can see he's at plus 20,000 down there with guys like it's not looking good for him, at least in the national sense. So I guess from your perspective, Andy, going into year 2, what kind of ceiling do you think there could be on Edgerrin Cooper? Is a defensive player of the year like performance in the cards? Like, what's the ceiling on this guy going into year 2 after such a strong finish?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to awards, it's almost like, it's not like a lifetime achievement, but it's really hard to go from like unknown to being like the defensive player of the year, right? Like that is a pretty big jump. Not that he's a complete unknown, but like a second year player who, like you said, kind of isn't on the national radar. So I think that's probably a step too far. I don't know. It's probably not this year, but to me, the ceiling for Edgerrin Cooper is somebody that can be the best off-ball linebacker in all of football. And again, I don't know that that's going to happen this year, but we saw it, like you said, the end of last year, he was playing at that level. I thought he had a phenomenal game against Minnesota, which is why you guys are maybe a little bit more familiar with it. The way that he played in that particular game, he was phenomenal. And he still has, again, some of those rookie moments where he lined up in the opening game against Philadelphia. He only got a handful of snaps. And one of those snaps, he lined up in the wrong gap and Saquon Barkley ran for a touchdown right in that gap. Like, so he just has some assignment sort of things that he has to clear up. The crazy thing about Cooper is he can be wrong and still be right. Like, even if he lines up wrong, even if he takes on the assignment the wrong way, like he still finds a way to make the play. He's just that freaky. I remember in OTAs, actually it was training camp last year, early training camp, there was either a stretch or a toss play to Josh Jacobs, and Edgerrin Cooper was in like a normal, like off-ball linebacker position, not like up close to the line or anything like that. And Josh Jacobs I think he got the toss, and Edgerrin Cooper was there. Like, he was just there. And he shot through the line so damn fast that both Paul Brettel, who does a great job covering the Packers, him and I just, without even having to say words, just like looked over at each other with like eyes like wide open of like, what just happened? He has special freaky speed on a field full of unbelievable athletes. He stands out. And it's just really fun to watch. So he put on apparently like 12 pounds of muscle, we'll see how that translates. If apparently it is not taking away any of his speed, which is freaky to think about if that does end up being the case, but he is a unbelievably talented player. I know Sam Munson just had him on his list of top 25 players under the age of 25. I know Baldinger early in the offseason did one of his classic Baldinger videos on Edgerrin Cooper and how great he played at the end of the year. So I think there's a little bit of buzz generating finally for him, but I literally think he can be the best linebacker in football.
Jeez. Well, one thing about Edgerrin Cooper that I'm wondering about, and I'm looking forward to seeing this season, is it feels like there's two different ways his development could go. One, as you said, is Green Bay really putting him in that off-ball linebacker position where it's been a long time since they've had a really reliable player. But I don't know, at least maybe I'm overreading into the Vikings game, but it seems to me like one of the things Edgerrin Cooper is really best at, like you said, is getting in the line, getting after running backs, and getting after quarterbacks. So I'm interested to see if, I'm not saying he's going to turn into Micah Parsons and make a full transition, but seeing how Green Bay balances his strengths as an off-ball linebacker versus his incredible pass rushing ability, I think will tell you a lot about what kind of player he is next year.
So here's what I would say about that. I think in general, the more you can get Edgerrin Cooper moving forward, the better you're going to be. I think anything where he has to drop back or like read and decide on things, I'm not saying he can't do that. I think he can. And clearly I wouldn't think he could be the best linebacker in football if he was extremely deficient in that area. But the more that you can have him just attacking, the better a player that he is going to be. So I think you do want him shooting gaps. I do think you want him blitzing. I don't think, and I could be wrong, and I'm not going to certainly limit him in any sort of way. I don't think his best spot is going to be as like a stand-up, outside edge rusher a la a Micah Parsons or anything like that. But I do think that you want him blitzing a ton. And the crazy thing about him is you can have him at a pretty sound depth to the point where you look over and you're like, all right, that's one guy I don't have to worry about. He's at a depth where he's not blitzing clearly. And all of a sudden he's at that depth. And then again, he's at the quarterback in the blink of an eye. So there's just some really fun stuff that Jeff Hafley can utilize with him with that freaky speed. And I think they're only scratching the surface for the different ways that they can utilize him.
Yeah, he was. You go ahead, Jack.
It was funny, Ziggy. I remember in our chat a couple weeks back, you sent a picture of, I think it was Edgerrin Cooper, and you're like, did Edgerrin Cooper get bigger? Does he look stronger to you? And at first we didn't really notice, but then we're like, yeah, I guess he did. What did you say? 12 pounds of muscle?
Yeah, they said. I think they said he was at 240 or a little bit over 240, and they said that there were times last year he was down to like 229. I think it was like a time where he came off of injury or something like that, where he was down to like 229 or something like that. So it was like 11, 12 pounds of muscle that he put on.
Yeah, the picture, it's not fun hearing a Packer linebacker, like, because that linebacker position, when you have someone who's just an absolute freak, it changes the whole defense. And I actually kind of feel like linebacker is undervalued across at least maybe among fans. Where it's, when you have that guy who can come in, and I guess we're starting to see more of like a lot of these great defensive ends have linebacker tendencies now where you can drop them back a few times. But like Cooper, being the way he was, I've been waiting for that for the Vikings. That's what I wanted like Anthony Barr to be. He had his moments, but it looks like the trajectory of Edgerrin Cooper is sort of what I was hoping that Anthony Barr could become in Minnesota. And at that point, you'll then have probably star players in the secondary at linebacker, and then you're hoping someone can show up on that defensive line. And we'll get to that in a second here. But we'll go Jordan Love. Jack, I know you've been itching for this
really
one.
Quick on Cooper, really quick, just before we get there. The really interesting thing is from a Packers standpoint, clearly have had Hall of Fame level quarterbacks, right? Amon Green at running back, some unbelievable Devontae Adams, it's Sterling Sharp, et cetera, at wide receiver, some unbelievable offensive linemen like David Bakhtiari. Tight end is maybe one that's a little bit more, but Jermichael Finley, now Tucker Kraft. There's been some really good tight ends. We could go Reggie White, and we could go all along the Charles Woodson, et cetera, Nick Collins, Leroy Butler. Green Bay's never in my lifetime had a great off-ball linebacker. There's been some really good ones.
Yeah, you're right.
Barnett is certainly in that conversation. Desmond Bishop for a few years played some really good football. AJ Hawk was supposed to be, but he never really developed into that upper echelon level of linebacker. I don't think he ever had a Pro Bowl in his entire career. And I could be wrong on that, but so there's never been the closest probably was when Clay Matthews made the transition for like 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I was
an
thinking.
off-ball linebacker. But he was still like a edge rusher at heart that would play a little bit of off-ball linebacker. That's probably about the closest, but there's never really been that true off-ball linebacker that's just been an absolute. I mean, if you want to go back to Nitschke, sure, we can go back there, but in my lifetime, there hasn't been that guy. So just kind of fun to see somebody at that position really look like they have, maybe Pro Bowl or All Pro caliber traits.
Well, maybe fun for you.
And a guy with that size and speed, like to be able to move with that size too is just superhuman stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see as the year goes on if he does turn into what we've been on him for quite a bit on this show. And it's weird because it's another one of those weird things with our show where as Jordan Love was coming up, we were like, wow, we're like some of the believers in this guy when everyone else doesn't see it yet. And I feel like we kind of got there with Cooper last year where you're sort of we are rooting for him, but at the same time, he's a rival. So I think he's going to have a great year.
It's easy to root for him. He's no match for JJ McCarthy's elite anticipation.
Oh, yeah.
And do you think us four could block Edgerrin Cooper or no?
Combined?
Yes.
No. What would be our plan of attack?
Well, we put Ziggy up front, obviously.
Yeah, my plan of attack is fetal position. I'm not getting near that guy.
You probably put me and Ziggy up front, being like the smallest and the skinniest. Just sacrifice us. Right?
Me and Andy are coming in behind.
I don't know.
You know what you don't want taking on off-ball linebacker? If linebackers on backs equal size, what does linebacker on podcaster equal? It doesn't end well. Even for podcasters, probably not great.
Andy, back at our Notre Dame days with me and Ziggy, we had a rugby player on the fourth floor. And one day, me and three of the guys were like, "Hey, DPP, come on out here. Let's see if we could block you. We're playing in the hallway."
Sure.
So we had one of our buddies pretending to do a punt, and we were seeing if we could get a punt off without him blocking it. He, with both arms, shoves two guys into the wall. Then I was next. So in this scenario here with Edgerrin Cooper, that would be me and you here. As opposed to backing away, I stepped up to block him, where his hand came up, broke my nose, cut my eyebrow. I actually saw stars. I didn't think you could see stars when, I thought that was just a joke. I saw stars as my head hit the ground. And, we got the punt off. So we got
all that matters.
We accomplished
all that
it.
Matters.
But I'm kind of envisioning that times two with 3 or 4 with
an
Edgerrin
18-year-old rugby player that's not Edgerrin Cooper.
versus Edgerrin Cooper. But, all right, Jack, go ahead. With the Jordan Love, you've been itching for this one.
So, Andy, we just did our all NFC North team for this year. And we went with Jordan Love over Jared Goff at quarterback. So try to put all your bias aside. Pretend you're just a football fan in general. Do you think that will be the right move? Would you rather have Jordan Love or Jared Goff coming into this season?
It's a really interesting question, and probably the worst answer in radio or podcasting is I don't know. I'm really interested to see how this entire division plays out from a quarterback standpoint, because I think there's so many really unique wild cards with this. But I was doing a little thinking on this because I did see your list get posted, and here's how I would kind of define it if I were in if the decision was like, who do you want, if you're a team, who do you want at quarterback for your team this year from the quarterbacks in the NFC North? I think I would take Jordan. And here's my reasoning. The first thing is, I know the one thing that I do know is what I'm getting with Jared Goff. And there's a lot of value in that. And listen, he's been a really good quarterback. Even in his not great days, he brought a team or helped bring a team to the Super Bowl. He probably was not the one mainly responsible there, but he helped bring his team to a Super Bowl. And within that offense, with the playmakers certainly that they have, he's been remarkably consistent. And I think, again, the big thing is, whereas with McCarthy and Love and with Caleb Williams, you have that question mark still over their head of what exactly is this? We don't have a full definition quite yet. With Goff, I know exactly what I'm getting, and there is some real comfort in that. And there would be a real temptation if I were, again, like a GM and I had to choose for 1 year, what do I want? I would be very tempted to take Jared Goff. I think for me, the reason I would go Jordan Love is we've now seen kind of like a floor. Even if these last 2 years combined are like the floor for Jordan Love, I feel comfortable we can still win football games with that. And they've made the playoffs over the last 2 years. But I just think the upside is higher. So you kind of get, whereas McCarthy and Caleb Williams, you have this, undefined upside where you just have no idea yet exactly where that upside could potentially be, but you have no idea what the floor is either. And it's just it's a complete mystery box. With Love, you have a little bit more defined floor than I think either of those other two, and you still have all the upside. Whereas with Goff, the floor is incredibly high. You have a really strong baseline, but you also maybe have a ceiling that might not be higher than any of the 4 quarterbacks in the division at the moment. So I think if I'm trying to win a Super Bowl, I'm going to take my chances with Jordan Love, knowing that I still am going to get a good quarterback no matter what, but I have maybe still a really strong upside with taking him as quarterback. So I'll go Love, but to me it is between Love and Goff, and it's very, very close.
Yeah, I mean, this past season, Love did get some slack. I mean, despite the team was 11 and 6, like made the playoffs. Their only losses were to the other best teams in the NFC. And now, do you think with the addition of Matthew Golden, if he can step into that role, like he was drafted to be a number 1 clear-cut, versatile, quick receiver, how much does that help Jordan Love's ceiling for this season? Could he be what he was in those last 10 games of, a couple of years back?
Yeah, I certainly think so. And I don't think it's just Matthew Golden. I think there's a variety of different things at play here. I think number one is he had 3 pretty significant injuries this past year. The MCL, the groin, and then the thumb injury at the end of the year. And on the surface, you're thinking, well, like that certainly affected him on the field. I think it affected this team from a practice standpoint a lot more than anyone's discussing. With him not being able to practice and missing a ton of practice time because of those injuries, not only did it affect him, but I think it affected the entire offense, and the rhythm and timing just never got there. You go back to the end of 2023 and the rhythm and timing of that offense was astounding. It was remarkable what they were starting to do, and they never found that in 2024. I think the missed practice time played a huge factor in that. I also think, so again, that plays a factor. Just him being healthy in general, I think is going to make him a better quarterback. I also think they just have a better offensive line. Josh Myers being gone, Elton Jenkins moving over, assuming they can get the contract thing figured out, bringing in Aaron Banks. And then, of course, you still have Jordan Morgan, Anthony Belton, amongst others who could potentially get in the conversation there. I think their offensive line is going to be better. I think they have a better idea of how to utilize Josh Jacobs. It felt like they were kind of learning on the fly of how to utilize him. They found a great way to do it, but they found a great way to run the ball, but they didn't find a great way to translate the run game into play action. With Aaron Jones, the offense really consistently flowed together where the run game and the pass game really melded together perfectly, and they were able to play off of each other. It really felt like with the Josh Jacobs style run game, they didn't ever really quite figure out how to use the play action game and the bootleg game and how to utilize that to their advantage. I think they'll be better set up for that this year. And then I just think some returns from injury as well. Marshawn Lloyd, Luke Musgrave, eventually they'll get Christian Watson back. You mentioned bringing in Matthew Golden, Savion Williams. I just think they have every ingredient that they need to be a very potent offense, but it's going to take these young players getting on the same page, finding that rhythm and consistency, and being a bit more balanced overall this upcoming year.
I think about you were mentioning the rhythm and the way that this team was playing at the end of 2023. And I remember the Cowboy game felt like the peak of that, right? Where when you said the timing that they had, I just kind of had a vision, maybe like a nightmare in my head of I can't remember who Love threw it to, just middle of the field. Remember when they went up like 28-0 or whatever it was?
It was Dobbs.
I think it was
in the end zone.
Yeah, I think that's the throw I'm thinking of, and that to me was sort of like I was like, wow, these guys are going to be a problem for a long time, because the way that they were able to build up that momentum from, what was it, like they lost to the Raiders or they beat the Raiders. He threw an interception, right, to lose to Vegas that year, earlier in the season.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, like went back earlier in that year, everything just felt a little off. And then when you saw them building up steam and it led to that Dallas game, I was like, oh my God, if this continues and these guys all take that step forward, this is going to be a real problem here. I agree with you. I think the injuries were the biggest problem last year. That people, a lot of Packers fans that we've had in our comment section, they don't seem to really like understand, or not understand, but they don't seem to take weight into how serious those injuries were. If you hurt your groin and you can't move, you can't move. Problem. So with this next question, I do want to also first preface it by saying I think the Packers, to win the Super Bowl, like, you're going to need that 2023 Jordan Love one way or another. We could talk all about all these other position groups, and it's worth talking about. But if Love can't get back to that level, or at least close to it, because it's a hard level to sustain, then it's not likely to me. So
I totally agree.
the position groups that everyone has their eyes on, it's edge rusher, it's receiver, cornerback is another one especially with the Jair news this offseason. Of those three groups that have a lot of attention, which one of those do you expect to perform at the highest level during the season? Because, we've seen some departures, some additions, and then at edge rusher, kind of just neutral.
This one's easy for me. Well, what do you think my answer is going to be? I'm curious what you think. I think there's one that's clear above the other two.
I don't think it'll be cornerback. My guess,
Receiver.
See, getting Golden, I think, helps. I'm going to go receiver. I'll say receiver.
Yeah, receiver. I think last year was just, the weird thing is that you came off of 2023 and you're looking at this wide receiver group and you're like, oh my God, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, even guys like Bo Melton and Malik Heath, you're like, they're all on their rookie deals. They're all like showing that they have the ability to be successful in the NFL. They're all either rookies or second year players. Like, this is the dream scenario. Like, it literally felt like everyone in the NFL would be envious of the Packers because they had this really remarkable receiver room and they were paying him like a combined $8 million last year. Like, it was remarkable, the feeling going into the season of like, this is a serious cheat code. Like, they have an unbelievable wide receiver core that's all really young and is making nothing combined. Like, how is this a real thing? And then Wicks doesn't play as well, and Reed doesn't play as well, especially in the second half of the season. And Dobbs doesn't take a step, and Watson gets hurt again, and Heath and Melton do nothing. And you're like, they just kind of went 0 for 6 in any sort of real development at the position. And it was so disappointing. And it just never again felt like they were in rhythm with Jordan Love. I think going back to our last conversation again, with Jordan being healthy, remember Jordan even missed practice time in camp because of the whole contract situation as well. I think Jordan being healthy, out there at practice every day, these wide receivers understanding that, hey, yeah, we were good in 2023, but we've got to like reset expectations and we got to get right back on the same page and everything like that. I think they're going to be hungry in 2024. And I think the competition too, with bringing in Golden and Savion Williams, like, there is nobody that is safe to be like, yeah, I'm guaranteed snaps or I'm guaranteed the ball coming my way. Every single one of those guys is going to have to work just to get out there on the field in 11 personnel. That's sort of the depth that they have at that position. And like, your sixth receiver battle is going to be between McCole Hardman, Bo Melton, and Malik Heath just to potentially even make the team. So I think that the competition, the depth, and just that we saw it in 2023 makes me believe that hopefully, at least from, again, a Packers standpoint, they're going to have a much better 2025 than they did last year. So I think there's at least proof of concept there. Whereas with edge rusher or just pass rush and with corner, I think you have to do a little bit more squinting to be like, maybe if this comes to fruition, it could maybe be good. But I think there's a little bit more of like a leap of faith with that.
Yeah, when you brought up like pretty much essentially going 0 for 6 with this super talented receiving room. I mean, no, that's not in question how talented these guys are. And you could say, I guess they kind of hit their floor with like the injuries, the drops, and to still finish the season how they did in the postseason is pretty impressive. And I think that is a good sign for years to come now with these guys just being so young as well.
Do you guys want some good news from a Vikings standpoint?
Yes,
if you're
love that. Please. We don't get a lot of that.
I'm begging for it.
I'm indifferent.
All right. So here's what I would say. If you're looking to be like a pessimist for the Packers of what happened, they had 6 tough opponents this past year. They had the Vikings twice. They had the Lions twice. They had the Eagles twice. They went 0-6 in those games. You can kind of go through and look at this. They beat Indianapolis. Now, Malik Willis was at quarterback, but they beat Indianapolis. That was a really bad team in week 2. They took care of business. They beat the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis. Awesome. Kudos. Congratulations. The Rams game, that's a good team in week, what was it, 5 or 6? I think that it was.
But that was no Cup and no Puka, right?
No Cup and no Puka Nacua, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, I'm on this.
Yeah, right. So they play Arizona, who again earlier in the season was not playing good football at all. They take care of Arizona. The Texans win is like a solid win, but Texans did not have the season that I think anyone expected from them last year. That's a fine win, but that was a close one too, by 2 points at home in Green Bay. They barely beat Jacksonville. Again, Love injury played a part there as well. They beat Chicago. They beat San Francisco, who was beat up entirely at that standpoint and had a backup quarterback in. They beat Miami, which was a fine win overall. But again, Miami did not have the team that anyone expected them. They beat Seattle without Geno Smith for the majority of that game. Sam Howell was at quarterback. And then they beat New Orleans. They crushed them with Spencer Rattler at quarterback, right? So yes, they still had a winning season, and nobody's apologizing for going 11-6 during the course of the year. Then, by the way, they lost to Chicago at the end too in that weird, bizarro end of regular season game. But they took care of their crappy opponents. And anytime they got a tough opponent whatsoever, I don't want to say they folded. There were some really competitive games, but they went 0-6 in those games, including in the wild card game against Philadelphia. So I still think there is some fear or trepidation of like, hey, you're going to have a really tough schedule this year. The whole NFC North does. We know that. It is going to be a murderer's row of a schedule to some extent. And you're going to have to play like to go like 10-7. I'm still in the old 16 game schedule. To go 10-7 is still going to take a pretty impressive effort overall from anyone in this division. So I'm still high. I think they're a playoff team. I think they're a really good team. I'm expecting much better than this past year, but you can look at it and say they were, merchants of bad football teams. And anytime they had a good opponent, they basically lost.
Well, there you have it, guys.
That they're like the 2023 Miami Dolphins.
Well, this season, I can guarantee one loss. That's in Pittsburgh on Sunday night. Maybe you
Jack's
go,
a big Steeler fan.
Maybe you'll go 16-1, but that's one guaranteed loss there.
It's, what's funny is you mentioned the Texans, and we're not going to get too into the Texans or anything, but we've talked a few times on our show that they almost feel like they're mirroring the Packers and the AFC's version with high expectations for their young quarterback. Kind of underperformed in the second year starting, but still an impressive run. Like you still get to the playoffs. They're in the divisional round. Like that was just the connection we've been making this entire time. I loved that rundown of the schedule right there. That was
you're welcome.
Yeah, that was very well done.
You guys would like that. The other team that's in that conversation, I'm going to be interested this year as well. Is the Washington Commanders. Because I think they have another sort of situation where they kind of took some people by surprise, took them by storm. Remember, it took a Hail Mary to beat the Chicago Bears, which we remember very well.
That was awesome.
And like they were super impressive in the playoffs, no question about it. But so was Green Bay the previous year. And all of a sudden, now teams play the quarterback different, and you're not going to catch anyone by surprise anymore. And I'm very interested to see if Washington has that year this year that the Texans and Packers experienced last year.
Yeah, so am I.
That's funny you bring up that Hail Mary, because it tends to happen to the Bears, which moves along nicely to our next.
Yeah, we're going to move into the. We got one question for each NFC North.
Yeah, to our next point here is about those Bears. There's no doubt that they have a talented roster this year. On paper, they're a good team. I'm not a huge Caleb guy. I won't get too far into that.
Jack hates Caleb.
Yeah, there are expectations for the Bears, but we know the Bears, they tend to, they bear it up, so to say. If something were to go wrong for Chicago this year, and I have my answer, what would that be? What can you see being their biggest problem in Chicago?
I mean, I think it's just Caleb, right? Like,
that's what
I hate to give Chicago credit. It's painful, as I'm sure you guys have had to do with Green Bay from time to time.
Yeah.
I think they ate their vegetables early in free agency and trades this year and built up their trenches, which is probably something they should have done last year, and then kind of went and tried going toy shopping after that. They probably did it in the wrong order. But I do think they kind of built up this offensive line much better, built up the defensive line much better. I love their young secondary. They've got good linebackers. I think they're going to be able to get to the quarterback better. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. I think their wide receivers are good. I'm surprised they didn't try to upgrade a little bit more at running back. I like DeAndre Swift, but I was a little bit surprised they didn't try to maybe get something a little bit more unique at that spot. But and then, of course, they go get Ben Johnson as well. I think, to me, just the massive question remains, can Caleb Williams run that offense efficiently and effectively? And, can he just get rid of the ball on time and play within a rhythm of an offense? I was maybe in the opposite standpoint. I was as big of a Caleb Williams guy as you could get going into that draft. I thought he was one of the best quarterbacks that I ever evaluated coming out of the draft. I thought, again, never, always keeping the asterisks that the Bears can bear it up at any point and they can ruin any quarterback at any given moment. It's a superpower of theirs. But I really thought he was going to come in and be really impressive really quick. And he was not. And so I think that to me is by far and away their biggest question, in everything that they've done to put those pieces in place, to bring in Ben Johnson, to all these moves. If Caleb's just not it, if he can't be the guy that they're hoping he can be, it all just sinks from underneath them. And they're going to have to, similar to, in a way, Minnesota with JJ McCarthy, where if that doesn't end up going well, all these unbelievable pieces that you have around, and the quarterback gurus and the great coach and the quarterbacks and coach and McCown and Justin Jefferson and everything, if McCarthy just doesn't work out, it becomes a problem. And you then have to sort of recalibrate and figure out, all right, what the hell are we going to do at quarterback? So to me, it has to be Caleb Williams.
One thing I really like about what Chicago did this offseason is I think they've put themselves in a position where you will know by the end of the year if Caleb Williams can be the guy. I think of like the situation the Panthers are in with Bryce Young right now, where even after you bring in Canales, there were so many questions about the offensive line, the weapons, the coaching. Like if you're Chicago, I think you can be confident we've got a guy that can create a decent offense. We saw him do it in Detroit. Jared Goff was making his throws on times. We've got the receivers. We've got the line. We've got DeAndre Swift, the engine of that offense. We've got the tight ends. Like there's so many good pieces on that team that I think the Bears can be comfortable moving on from Caleb Williams if he has another crummy year.
Got him more weapons too in the draft.
Yeah, now there's pressure. The offensive line's better. The weapons are better. Like now there's expectations. Last year, his rookie year, they weren't built to win.
They did get off. They were 4-2. Like if that Washington game goes differently, they're 5-2 after that game.
Like what was their
like? I don't know if they actually They lost 10 in a row. I think until the Packer game.
What was their win total last year? 5.5.
Yeah.
5?
I don't know the win total, but that was like what was crazy about Chicago is it plummeted downhill. And then I actually did I thought they ending the year with the win in Green Bay. I know that there's not a ton of moral victories, but I actually thought that kind of was one with the last second drive down the field. Like Caleb, I like that they're breaking it down to, I'm pretty sure Ben Johnson's having him practice like snap counts and stuff like that. Like they're really breaking this down to the very finest details and going from the ground up, which is, to break the curse that you were talking about, Andy, you kind of need to do things like that.
Yeah, getting back to the fundamentals of quarterback play, and it's just such an important thing because you get the live game and the defense is just throwing everything at you and your head's just swimming. And the first thing that's going to go is all the simple stuff, right? So just to get that ingrained, I think for Green Bay's point of view, there's no way. I mean, I watched Aaron Rodgers his first couple of years in preseason and in training camp. It was a train wreck. And I watched Jordan Love. Like Jordan Love, guys, most people don't know this. I actually think Green Bay's media was extremely kind to Jordan Love when he first got to Green Bay. I've never seen any, Jordan, when he first got to Green Bay, would get the ball, kind of scan the field and then just check it down as soon as he could. Like it was a check down every single time. If there was a throw over 10 yards, it was remarkable. Like he just wasn't ready. So it just, the more that you can get those guys the reps that they need and the fundamentals that they need, I can't say enough. Rodgers and Love would have been atrocious if they got thrown into starting their first years. And I mean, atrocious. So, it's not fair to some of these young quarterbacks that have to go in right away. And hopefully but hopefully from a Caleb Williams standpoint, he can overcome that and, certainly be better in year two.
Mm-hmm. Well, Andy, moving on to a team that's near and dear to everybody's heart here, I think, the Minnesota Vikings. When we were at the draft in Green Bay, we were going around Lambeau Field asking Packers fans just one question. This is the same question we want to ask you. Okay. He came up earlier in the show, but does JJ McCarthy terrorize you? Does he live in your nightmares? And if not, what week of the season do you think he will?
So this is an interesting question. I am not concerned about JJ McCarthy yet. But what I will say, let me just find it right here. Here's my notes. All right. This is my last year's draft board. Where do you think JJ McCarthy was in my draft board last year? Not for the Packers, just in general. Wasn't that obviously not Packers specific? They didn't need a quarterback.
I think I know. Jack, you guess. I think I know.
Where did he went? What overall? 20?
He went 10.
Oh, right. Went 10. 16?
No. Wait, do you mean among the quarterbacks or?
No, just in the entire.
In the entire draft.
Just 16, 17?
I'm going 4.
I'm at 4. I'm at 4.
Wow.
On my draft board. So I had Caleb 1, I had Drake May 2, I had Neighbors 3, I had McCarthy 4, and then Jaden Daniels 5. I had 4 quarterbacks in my top 5, but McCarthy was 3rd on my list. Third on my list of quarterbacks, 4th on my overall board. I really liked him coming out of college. I thought he had everything that he needed to be an extremely successful quarterback. Now, obviously, we're seeing Minnesota work with kind of the pacing within the throws, and just kind of not build him from the ground up, but give him a few more tools in his toolbox to be able to be a successful quarterback. I don't think that you could possibly have a quarterback go to a better situation than what JJ McCarthy, other than, again, maybe the Rodgers and Love situations. Those are certainly arguable, obviously, but to go where he is going, the unfortunate standpoint, again, from a McCarthy and for your standpoint, is the injury in year one. That's just that like everything was trending perfectly. He's going to get a year probably, or however long he needed to sit behind Darnold, get the great exposure to everything within that offense, but not be pressured to play right away. That part definitely sucks. But everything else, you've got the play caller, you've got the head coach, you've got the quarterbacks coach, you've got Jefferson and Addison and Aaron Jones and Hawkinson. I don't need to tell you guys. You've got everything around him needed to be successful. And for a quarterback that I think is just a winner and knows how to play the game the right way and doesn't need to make like every single spectacular throw, he's willing to take what's there for him. I think this is a perfect situation for him. So I'm not to the point yet where in 2025, I'm like losing sleep over JJ McCarthy being the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. And I still think there's clearly going to have to be a step that he takes and shows the world that he can be that guy. But I will tell you, I was not a fan of the Minnesota Vikings getting my fourth graded player in that specific draft and getting them at quarterback. I think he can be extremely, extremely good. And from a Packers standpoint, hopefully that does not come to fruition.
I'll take that. For a question that we were kind of thinking you just laugh off, like that answer was quite satisfying as a Viking fan to listen to.
Are you not at all concerned that most of his college days were just handing off to Blake Corum, not really passing the ball?
So I think what your job to do as a quarterback is to make the plays when you need to make the plays. And like I almost love the way that they utilized him, and I almost love how he handled that responsibility. There are certain games he only threw like 13 passes in a game, but when he needed to come up with a clutch throw, either on third down or whether it be in a key red zone situation, he almost always came up with it. I mean, that play where, what was it, like the weirdo reverse end around where he like had to like throw the ball off. I don't even remember what the entire situation was, but I remember it was one of the more absurd plays of anything in that particular draft class. Like he just finds ways to make plays when he's in those situations. So again, until I see him throw, 35, 40 passes a game and be the alpha and be like, yep, I am going to do everything. Yeah, I do have some questions about that, of whether he can do that. But again, do I think in Minnesota's offense, being asked what he's going to be asked to do and being able to utilize the running backs that they have and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison doing a huge chunk of the heavy lifting? Yeah, I think you can trust him to throw 25, 26 passes a game when need be and come up clutch when he needs to come up with a big play. And yeah, I think even we saw it in that preseason game a year ago where he's able to really find some pretty impressive throws. And I followed it pretty closely as well, because again, when you have somebody that high on your board, you kind of want to keep an extra eye on them, especially when they're in your division. See what they're doing. I was really impressed with some of the stuff. Every time a training camp video was posted, I'm like, yep, that's kind of exactly what I was expecting. So it's a huge jump going from that situation in preseason and training camp now to doing it for a full regular season. And which is why, again, I'm not losing sleep over it at the moment, but definitely keeping an extra eye on it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's great. That is awesome to hear. I love his mindset too. Like the Alabama game, late drive to tie the game, go to overtime, and bouncing back from the interception in the preseason game. He just seems like a great guy to root for. All right, so we got 2 questions left here, Andy, and we'll go a little fast because I know that you got to get out of here soon. I just have to ask a Lion question so we don't have angry Lions fans in the comments saying, why didn't you hit us? We look at the Detroit situation, and it's kind of weird because 15-2 is a crazy record. Like 15-2 is an all-time season, and obviously you lose the 2 coordinators. You lose Zeitler and Ragnow up front, which are pretty big losses for the offense as a whole. On the defensive side, though, outside of losing Aaron Glenn, they're getting so many guys back. Like, just if you go through the injuries, I mean, I know but the injuries is just crazy last offseason. So when you look at Detroit for this year, the schedule's really it's a brutal schedule for the Lions. So I can't see 12 games feels like a ceiling for them to me. But as far as being more dangerous, right? with the additions they're getting back on defense. Do you think that this is going to be a even better team necessarily than last year, despite maybe not having quite the record?
I don't think it gets talked about enough about Aidan Hutchinson. And like, he was defensive player of the year at that point in time. Like, so to lose him, I mean, I immediately knew at that point of like, that's probably their season. Like, I don't think, and they did a great job during the regular season to overcome it, but that's just too big of a loss. Like, if you're trying to get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, you need your, top 3-4 guys, and to have arguably the best defensive player in football go down and to lose him for the rest of the season, for them, that was clearly heartbreaking. So I think getting him back, if he can be where he was at prior to the injury, is as big of addition as anyone has in any team this offseason. So yeah, that scares the crap out of me. I do think the interior of their offensive line is a big question. I was a fan of Christian Mahogany coming out. I liked Ratledge as well, that they got this year in the draft in the second round. So I think they've done a pretty solid job of putting some pieces there, but there's no mistake. Like, Frank Ragnow is a massive loss. I'm gonna just miss watching the Kenny Clark, Frank Ragnow battles from, back a few years ago, where those two guys would just go at each other for 50, 60 snaps. And it was one of the most fun tapes that you're going to watch all year long. But I think that's going to be a big loss for them. And I'm really interested to see not only just, again, the coordinators, but that the interior of the offensive line as well. But yeah, getting Hutchinson back, massive. Yeah,
they're going to be a problem again. So with that said, let's fast forward now. Okay, we're going to put ourselves in January. We'll say early January. It's right around New Year's. Andy Herman, fresh off a great New Year's Eve, is checking out the NFC North standings, the NFL standings come playoff time. We're getting ready for wild card weekend. Who are the NFC North champions? Who's hosting the playoff game?
I'll go. Of course, my heart wants to say Packers. I probably will say Lions. I just think they have such a high floor, and I know everyone's got a really tough schedule, but like, I know what I'm getting out of the quarterback. I think as much credit as he already gets, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown still doesn't get enough credit. Laporte is a stud. They've got the running backs. I think they'll find ways to make the offensive line work. Getting Hutchinson back, I was so impressed. And again, I know Glenn's gone, but what they were able to do on defense, despite all those injuries, like, it was still tough to get stuff against them at times. And if they can kind of carry that over as well, I don't think it's going to be easy. And sincerely, I think the Bears have the murkiest path to trying to win an NFC North, clearly. But if you told me at the end of this season that any of the four won it, I'd be like, I could probably get there with almost anyone. I don't think, again, barring a crazy amount of injuries, I don't think the Lions could finish fourth. I think that would probably be the number one most surprising thing. But the order here that this ends up with is a complete beautiful mystery, to the point where I think every single one of these NFC North matchups are going to be must-watch TV, and it could really go in so many different directions. So I can't wait for it. I'll say Lions, but I would probably put it Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. And again, I think that's a little bit chalk at the moment. But again, if you told me it was Vikings or Packers, Lions, anything, I would not be stunned whatsoever.
Yeah. Could even be 3 playoff teams again very easily. If
the only thing, the schedule for all of them is the only thing that would be like, and did they cannibalize themselves to some extent where, that would be my only trepidation there. But talent wise, absolutely. They absolutely could.
All right, Ziggy, take us home here.
All right, Andy, one last question for you. I'm sure, like everybody else on the show, you were glued to your seat watching the time trial in Caen this morning, stage 5 of the Tour de France. Absolutely shocking developments. Jonas Vingegaard losing over a minute to Tadej Pogacar. Remco Evenepoel doing what he does. My question for you, imagine you're the director sportif of Visma Lisa Bike right now. Your lead rider just lost a minute. You're not getting into the mountains for another week. What are you telling this team to try and keep the culture together? You've got your star rider, his wife's talking to the media saying that the team's mistreating him. What are you doing to get things under control so that things don't fall apart before the tour even really starts?
I'm telling them to get some damn perspective, and that they're biking. They are biking, cycling, whatever the hell it's called, that it doesn't matter whatsoever. So just clear your mind. Nobody's going to care. And, just go out there and perform at your absolute best, because it's an impossibility to have drama in cycling unless you're, Lance Armstrong and you're doping the hell out of things. But outside of that, it's going to be okay. Tomorrow, nobody's going to remember.
Just ride, baby. That's what it sounds like.
Ride.
Just ride. That was awesome. We had no idea what he was going to ask there, Andy. So it was a great answer.
That caught me off guard for sure.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, that was not on my rundown. My rundown did not include, was it Tour de France? I already forgot.
Yeah.
Was it Tour de France questions?
It sounded like you were speaking
It's the
French.
biggest sport in the world. Most exciting sporting event there is.
Yeah, we have
No
a
one else
fantasy
believes me.
Tour de France league on the show that Ziggy's been running.
If
Over
I
30
could
people.
either watch the Tour de France or Paul and friends go against one rugby player again, that I would much rather watch Paul and friends take on the rugby player again. That to me sounds much more entertaining.
Well, maybe we'll fly out for training camp and we could get it going with Edgerrin Cooper. We could put it to the test and see how it goes, the four of us. But Andy, thanks a lot for coming on today. Just tell everyone, where can they find your work?
Yeah, at Andy Herman NFL on social media, Pack a Day Podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Those are the best ways to find me. Appreciate you guys.
Yep, and Andy really does the best work, guys. So go check that out. Leave some comments. He's amazing at what he does, and no one works harder. So we appreciate Andy, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you,
do it
Andy.
again soon. Thanks, guys.